Hi everybody, as he said, my name is Samantha Alloway and I've been here for 11 months at the LARC of Illinois, and I picked quite a time to come on to an advocacy organization. So as I started, I thought maybe I was going to throw a couple golf outings. I was really excited about that. I didn't know the administration was going to come in and everything I thought was right was all of a sudden was going to be left. And it changed all of our advocacies. It changed our directors. It changed who we hired. It changed our social media content. It changed what I decided to do on a day-to-day basis. And I'm pretty sure you guys all would understand why. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself so you understand what I'm here, why I decided I wanted to be at the ARC. I have a very diverse, strange background going back to newscast director. I worked for CBS News and WIFR up in Rockford out of school. And then I worked for the Rockford Ice Hogs and I worked for the Chicago Blackhawks, and I was their visual presentation manager. So like communications, marketing, sports, I loved all that stuff. And live production always I just loved it. So I always did that. And then my life took a very interesting turn. I had lost my father when I was 16 to cancer. And then at 24, like on the edge of my career, I was gonna work for the Dallas Stars down in Texas. And my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer. And we lost her when I was 24. And I'm the oldest of three. My sisters are twins. They were only 19. I was 24. So what changed my life the most wasn't just losing them, but learning what it is to be a caregiver, learning what it is to sign DNR papers. You know, at the age of 24, I took over a 2,000 square foot house and very quickly had to grow up, if you would. So that big career I had changed as I took care of my sisters who were going through a lot of mental health issues after the loss of our family. So rebuilding, and I'm sure everybody in this room has had to rebuild a time or two or three or four, you know, depending on how life goes. And it changed who I was as a person. I started working with the American Cancer Society as a lobbyist and a canvasser, explaining to people what does cancer really do to a family. Because you just look and it's the one person we're treating. I'm like, but you don't understand. You're not just treating the one person. You're treating the whole family. Because what they're able to have, the respite care we're able to have, that goes to the family. And it's very interesting how I believe in the universe and God prepares you. It's kind of the same thing now. You know, we talk about the one individual we serve and often don't talk about the parents and the caregivers and the aunts and the uncles and the brothers and sisters that come together to support the ones that we love. So my life took a big change, and I went to advocacy and to fighting for other people because I wanted to fight for others in ways that I had hoped and maybe needed to be fought for. Does that make sense? And so it's like this energy. So eventually became a paralegal, went to work at Little City Foundation, which is up in Palatine. I was their first director of government relations in 10 years. And the reason I got that job was because Sean Jeffers was actually my yoga student. So one of the ways that I dealt with my inner emotions of life was to turn to yoga, which you could have never convinced me I was gonna do yoga. Let me explain. You could have never, I played rugby, basketball, I was not gonna do yoga. But I went on a health journey, decided I couldn't take care of others if I didn't take care of myself. And I lost 120 pounds, became a personal trainer. And one of these humans that was there that came to my 5:30 a.m. classes was Sean Jeffers, who happened to be the CEO of Little City Foundation. And as my life moved and I decided I need to make money that was beyond $30 per class, I went back to school, I became a paralegal, and one day I was mad at the attorneys and I Googled director of. That's all I Googled, and it said Director of Government Relations, Little City Foundation. And I said, okay, I hear you, I'm gonna go. And I applied and I got the job. So then I got to enter this amazing world of what this advocacy looks like. And part of my story is also I have 3 sons, 11, 10, and 4. A surprise visitor came in during COVID. We're very happy he's here, he's amazing. But my 10-year-old is on the spectrum. And so at the age of birth, I started noticing differences in Ellis than his brother Jax, who are only 20 months apart. So it's a very quick comparison, if you would. And I'd go to the pediatrician and I said, something's different. He doesn't hold a fork, he's not talking. And they just blew me off time and time again. It's a story I've heard over and over again too, that sometimes early intervention doesn't happen because not everybody takes our voices seriously. So I became determined that not only would my voice be taken seriously, but everybody I loved voice would be taken seriously. And that's where I learned to advocate for others. When I got into this realm, I learned about the Institute and IARF and the ARC and all these state agencies. And something I found interesting with every room I got into, there were a lot of system experts that understood the waiver system and how payments were done and funding. But what I didn't hear was anybody talking about the real life day-to-day of families and parents and self-advocates. It's one thing to understand a system, it's another to understand the reality. And so I decided, maybe crazily, that my voice was worth being heard. And so when this job opened, I went for it. And by the grace of it all, I landed. So I've been here 11 months, and it has been quite the 11 months. So I just like to give that opportunity so you guys know what we're at the ARC. We have 7 directors, and each of us actually have personal experience. All of us are parents of children with disabilities. Some of our children are 50 years old, and some of our children are 4 years old. And that also gives a great energy, because there's people that understand the transition and the journey, and from diagnosis to when we're planning for forever. And I can't tell you how many times per week somebody reaches out to us and say, I want to be able to die. And that sounds like a horrible thing to hear, but the reality is what transition, what are we providing as a state and as a nation to make sure that people have a pathway forward that is safe for their families. So that's what we're doing here at the ARC, is every day trying to make sure those voices. Now, you guys have probably heard about the looming threats to Medicaid that quite often now they don't really feel looming. It feels like there's a reality that there will be some cuts made to Medicaid. So I'm very open to questions and always like to tell the truth that I am not a Medicaid expert, but we have a team of 3 that are. So can answer any individual waiver questions you may have, any individual impact, but I can give you the large scale scope of what we've been doing if you don't mind. So I've been to Washington, D.C. 4 times in the last 11 months, 2 in the last 8 weeks. We've met with every Republican congressional representative from the state of Illinois, face-to-face personally, and they've been very open to our voices, very open to the concerns of families, and spoke to the realities that in 2011, there were cuts that were made under the different administration, and then there were the rounder years here in Illinois, where cuts were made by 3.5%, and Governor Rauner came in and he changed it to 15%. So I don't know if you were here at that time. I wasn't working, I'm looking at you, Ernie, but I wasn't in a providership. But the reality is it's lots of people lost the opportunity for services, specifically around home and community-based services. So we're just trying to lift the voices, bring together the reality. We started a Can You Please Send Us Your Stories campaign, and we've collected over 250 state stories, like statewide. We've actually had 57, as of this morning, 57 counties in Illinois have given us stories. Those stories have been shared on the Senate floor by Senator Tammy Duckworth. They've been shared by Senator Durbin. I'm incredibly proud of that. Just this morning, it was shared by Congressman Davis, Congresswoman Schakowsky, Congresswoman Bazinski, Congresswoman, I know there was one more, Ramirez, that have just reached out within the last 7 days to ask us, can you give us these stories? So that impact is there. They're being shared. When I've talked to the representatives, and it's so interesting because when you're out there in DC, it just feels like you've entered this entire world that it's like nothing I've ever seen before. But the reality is they're just as accessible to families here as they are in DC. The difference is in DC, you could just go knock on the door, right? And they're not always in district here. So we got to do that and be face to face. What I was told over and over again is nobody's looking to go at this budget with a sledgehammer. They want to go at it with a scalpel. They believe that there could be fraud, waste, and abuse. Those are the 3 words we were told over and over. And their goal is to make sure that that fraud, waste, and abuse is no longer present. And that's why they have to cut some of it from Medicaid, because they're saying it could be fraudulent. Our retort to that is that what's wrong with that is that the problem falls on the end user. And the best example I could give to that is right now, my director, and he's allowed me and asked me to share his story, Greg Walkington, his daughter Colette has been at Laurie's Children's Hospital for the last 6 weeks. This is actually a short stay for her. One time she was in the hospital for 415 days straight. She was born with cerebral palsy and an entire list of other disabilities. And Colette's had to come home, got to come home many times. and had an amazing life in the community. Went to day services at Envision Unlimited, has a lot of friends within her community, but the reality is her disability often weighs on her, but it of course doesn't just weigh on her, right? Greg is there right now, and Lisa, his beautiful wife, is there right now. So his fight is, we are taking the brunt right now. If they were to cut Medicaid, where's Colette going to go? Where are so many families going to go? Are they going to be immediately institutionalized, which we know in the state of Illinois? Each person in an institution costs the state of Illinois $350,000 to $400,000 a year, where home and community-based services cost an average to $60,000 to $75,000 per year. So even when we look at the numbers, we try to say, no, like people deserve choice, parents deserve choice, and self-advocates deserve their voice. So that's been our retort, and it will stay that way, that we believe people deserve choice. Now, no vote's been made yet. We've been told they're gonna vote this week as of this morning from the ARC of US. That's another amazing extension we have here of the ARC of Illinois. We're just an extension of the ARC of the US. So they're in DC every day. And so we could take your stories and your questions and always extend them to this large national advocacy, which is really what this industry kind of needs right now, is to join our voices together. Because one person at a time doesn't make the same impact as when you come in, you're like, we are the ARC of Illinois, we proudly serve 234,000 individuals in the state of Illinois, and we are here demanding protection of the services that creates a safe and fulfilling life for all. So that's just a little something we've been up to. I'm really like to meet you guys a little bit, and if you guys have a specific question, or maybe even a comment of something that's going on here at LARC, because this is the first time I've ever been to Lansing, Illinois, actually, so not just to LARC, but to Lansing. So if you have something maybe you could talk to and say, hey, this is what we're doing here, I would love to hear it. Don't be shy. Don't jump at the same time. Anybody is smiling.
Can I just ask you a question about
Please.
Colette?
Yes.
So why would these cuts affect her specifically? If they're talking about, doing able-bodied people, those kind of cuts, fraud, what's going to happen that would affect her specifically?
It would cut services within Illinois. And so when Colette does go home, which many times she has got to, she receives home and community-based services that make it possible that her family could be at home together and not in Lurie's Children's Hospital.
No,
so that's why.
You talk to would tell you that's not the case?
Correct. It is, but the reality is over 1 million people. Governor Pritzker came out 2 weeks ago, and that's another office we work with directly, is the Office of the Governor. He said right now he estimates over 1 million, if the cuts that have been proposed were to occur, over 1 million people in Illinois would be forced to lose services based on the incapability of the state to make up for the $8 billion a year that the federal government provides. And so that's the risk of the cut. Now, will it be her directly? I don't know. I don't know who it will be. And in this system, she's insurance. It's a completely different at Lurie's. But the hope of all families, well, not all, but most, is that eventually Colette would be able to come home. And that's where the risk of those services being cut comes into play. Because providers can't make up for that deficit either. So that's really the why.
It seems like you're saying in part that it's very difficult for the state to look closely enough at people receiving benefits to determine if there is fraud and get rid of the fraud.
That is what they're saying, sir.
Pardon?
But that's what they're saying, yes, and that's what.
So the state is saying that if we get less money, we've got no choice but to reduce the money because we really don't have the ability to hone in and try to get rid of this waste.
That's right. That is what they're saying.
Yeah.
Do you have input to that? Or do you agree with their sentiment?
I
always wonder if people, but yes.
Because, in effect, that position would be, just what we said,
But they can't.
Yeah, they can't do it, or they certainly can't turn it on and off. It would be a long-term project to do it.
And I feel like you sound like me, because I was in a meeting, I asked this exact same question. I was like, well, we should be fine in Illinois. You said we have $2.6 million in a rainy day fund, so if that's $3 billion there that can go to services, there's gotta be somewhere else the state can figure out. That was me asking these almost rookie type questions, with the response being an immediate no, that there is no way to make up for that deficit. So that's what I've been told, and that's what most people are to understand.
I'm a parent.
Hi.
This is my first meeting here.
Hi.
My son attends here, and we love it. And he was on the funds list and got pulled for home community-based waiver. And it's very frightening to think that that will go away. I left my job because my mom helped me to take care of him, and she's no longer able. So I left my job. So I can't work. So, but being able to bring him somewhere that gives him a meaning,
Yes.
and just, he's grown so much, love Tom.
Yeah.
But it's scary to me, and not knowing like how, if they do cut it because, federal can't match it, like, where does that leave him? Does he just one day have a day program and then the next day he doesn't? I know you can't answer that. I know that's, but as a parent.
So all I could base that answer off of, I wasn't a part of this industry or in this role when this happened in 2011. I don't know if anybody in the room was, so feel free to join into that. But from the parents I've got to meet with that have told me, the reality is yes, they would lose services. And many providers in the state, which right now I'm calculating the number of providers, they closed because they couldn't keep staff when they couldn't bring people in to provide the service. I hate the thought of fear, because to me, like, if we raise our voices loud enough, we could prevent this. Like, that's in my soul. And I always try to take 2 steps away from imposing fear. I just like to impose the education of this is what I'm being told. And that was the reality at some points. But the good thing I'll say to that is your son's here now.
He is.
And so I think in all terms of life, we have the scary years and we have the amazing years. I'd like to think that we even have more amazing years ahead of us. And if maybe anything, this will draw our voices together. Were you saying something, sir?
I was asking, this is mandated by the federal government.
Yes, sir.
How much control does the state really have?
So, from my understanding from the Ways and Means Committee, and that's Representative Darren LaHood sits on there. So he was kind enough truly to sit down with me and say, this is what it would look like. They would give the power back to the state, is their hope. And that the state, to your point, would have a more effective gauge of what does the state budget look like. Obviously, it's a lot smaller than the national budget, so their hope is they could take a more in-depth dive. The problem most people have with that is that takes years to establish that type of deep sea budget dive into who's receiving services. And if it gets cut immediately, it causes more crisis than it does prevention, because then people are being sent home and then families can't work. But another Medicaid requirement that we think is definitely going to come through is a work requirement. So all able-bodied individuals will be asked to go to work. Your story couldn't be more perfect as to why that's often a very difficult ask for a family. I couldn't work full-time for 4.5 years. There was no, and I told you what my career was prior to having children. I could not have a job. It's not I couldn't do a job. It's I could not leave my house. And that's why I taught yoga and Pilates and personal training. I worked at Menards. I'd get up at 4 a.m, put together lawnmowers, not kidding, put out bird feed, go home, raise my children, and teach yoga at night when my husband got home. This is the reality of a lot of families. I'm actually not that special for it because somebody cannot work. So that's the situation we're in, and we're lucky that we even had 2 parents involved, that there was a choice, because then we would go deeper into single parents and where do they turn for that assistance. So their hope is that the state could look at it and that the state can, but Governor Pritzker has told us that he cannot, that he won't be able to make up for that. At this table, it's a very lovely table. Anything? Tell me. That'll be something about you. What are you guys doing here at LARC? Will you guys tell me how you part of this community?
I'm a residential supervisor here.
Wonderful. Okay, so how long have you worked here?
7 years.
7 years. All right. Anyone else? Are all employees or? All right. So you know what I mean, and how I bet a lot of the people you serve here, you're their family too in a lot of ways. and you know their day-to-day, you know, no, they don't eat that. I mean, I know it has to be because all the DSPs, and one of the great parts about Little City is you could volunteer to work on weekends as a DSP, and I did that because to me I wanted to understand, because like one of the biggest was fair DSP wage increases, and that was one of my largest advocacies, which we secured $2.50, and then the state came in with guidehouse calculation. There's a lot of fights going on, is all I'm saying. We're always fighting something, but the reason was I wanted to understand what that life, so thank you for your work and for your dedication, because you helped my child a lot, so I love you for it. That's the truth. Anyone else? Sure. Ernie, anything else I can kind of like venture into or talk about, or I like to make it as specific as possible.
What can families do, or board members do to speak out or advocate?
Yeah. So if you're,
State, national level?
please. So as I said, on our website, there we have a Medicaid advocacy, which I could send you the details if you'd like to send it to the group. It's a little easier to find. We do have call to action. You said you're already texting, but we are sending letters to congressional representatives. But what we're doing, our next focus here is going to be videos to legislators. So the letters go far enough, but we're trying to create a video series. I did one call to action for Medicaid, and I thought maybe it would go somewhere. It actually has already been at over 100,000 views. So the great part about that is the M word, Medicaid, got the conversation started a little bit. And a lot of people have followed suit, collecting stories. Don't be afraid of social media. It sounds small, but it's real. If you need help or would be interested in meeting with your congressional rep, we set those meetings up not just in person, but also virtually, because a lot of families can't leave the house. So that's what we did for constituents in Congresswoman Mary Miller's district, LaHood's district, and Chris Bost. They met with us, the actual representatives, once, and then have always sent in their staff. But their staff, remember, is always the people that are taking the notes and bringing it directly back to those reps. And often they do more of the heavy lifting than the reps themselves have time to do. So the staffers are very imperative in this case. So reaching out to them, making the calls, coming to this meeting and being together, listening to each other, being supportive, especially if things ever do change, to one another. I think just building the community together, just like you do, is always a really great start. Yes, sir.
So, one of our biggest issues,
Thank you.
I'm very happy that we have a couple of parents here, is that we really have some apathy in our parents. I'll be very honest with you. I mean, these two ladies are here. Are there any other parents here besides the two of you?
Oh, I didn't realize. Thank you. And that's
So-
what I meant. Who's LARC? Tell me.
Right.
Okay, all right.
So, I think we have a wonderful staff, I think our board is very good, but our issues are that I think the parents, some parents, I don't want to include you in that, are
Not you. You're cool. No,
are apathetic, and I think they think that this is never gonna go away, but this could go away.
I get what you're saying. So you're saying, how do we?
Well, you said sometimes you have to scare people, so I don't
I
know.
want to scare people. I know. But I know.
But
do
I
we?
don't know as a board member, what else we can do to promote the parents being involved.
Great.
Is this typical that you would see just
I wouldn't.
parents come to a meeting like this?
So, may I ask how many people you serve? That would be how I would. How many people do you serve at LARC? President Ernie?
75, no last count that I've seen.
Okay. Okay. Well, then this is that the number about 75?
Yeah.
That's okay. It's a perfect comparison because 2 weeks ago, not even 10 days ago, I was at Helping Hand in Naperville, and they serve over 470 individuals, and they had a parent group, and there was only 12 people there. So to your point, yeah, you know,
It's similar.
it's similar. But I'm saying you have more presence here, so be proud to have that strong. So are you all board members? Be proud that you are the type of board that comes to this and even presents themselves. It's something to be very proud of. To get parents involved, are you guys sending out, I just assume because I never want, newsletters, mailers, are we sending out all that stuff?
Yes.
And do they just maybe not have time or exhausted at night?
Could be.
You know, something that we would love to do, if you think maybe it would help boost it a little bit, is hold a virtual session specifically for LARC. You know, if you wanted to send out a link to the parents, and myself and my directors, who are honestly even a little bit more entertaining than me, can join it, and we can help prepare. Like Friday, we have a Medicaid call that's open to the public, and we're talking about all these issues. And what's great is it gives parents an opportunity to say, my son receives exactly this. What happens if this happens? And then we can help with those specific questions. Last Friday, we had 350 people on that call. And then we also offer it in Spanish, and we had 175 on that call. So it tells you people do want to know, you know, people do. So you are members of the ARC of Illinois. Thank you, sir. And I'd be happy to do that for providers. You know, if you guys wanted, like, this is an intimate session with the ARC, and invite the parents. They're gonna tell you about your rights. They're gonna tell you how to access your congressional representatives and how to use your voice to help those you love. We could do that. You know, that's one way. And it's a little out of bounds way, but I'm also looking too to learn what is a way. Like I being a new CEO, sometimes you can, oh, well, you're a rookie, but at the same time, I'm also willing to do things maybe differently than they've been done. And I've often found that if you can make a specific presentation to meet your family's needs, that's really where they'll realize. And maybe it wouldn't be fear, but we could educate them of the reality of what these cuts look like. And it could mean that they can no longer come to LARC. And I'm gonna guess they're gonna say, we don't want that. And then maybe they'll come together and we can do a congressional meeting. Or maybe they'll come to DC with us next year. The possibilities to continue this truly are endless. You know, like we have at the ARC of the US, the Disability Policy Seminar, where there were 900 advocates came from the entire United States to be in one room together to learn how to advocate just like this. And so I look at a parent like you, I'm like, I would love to bring you to DC. I would just put you in a jacket and send you to the hill, because you have that spark and that ability to tell your child's story. That's where most of the power lies. And they really do want to hear from the self-advocates and from the families. And so also the staff, we could come here and we could do a training during like community day services. You know, teach like voting rights, talk about how do you make a call, how do you help comprise a letter. And everybody has different, but I've had letters that I've given to congressional reps that are their pictures. But so what? It's their picture, that's their truth. And then we bring that. And then bringing those voices together, that's where we see the most impact. And nobody likes to receive a picture from somebody asking for help and that doesn't hit them right here. These aren't cold, horrible people, you know, people disagree and people agree. That's life. Life has discord. And I know there's a lot of hatred, and I don't really go that route. I have my parents to thank for that. My dad was like a staunch Republican, like made me listen to Rush Limbaugh as a child Republican, and my mother believed in Hillary Clinton. So I grew up there. I can really get along with anybody. And I also know that in both ways they had very good points, and in both ways, maybe there was something to disagree with. And so that's how I look at this too. So the people I get to talk to, Republican or Democrat, nobody likes receiving a picture and then being like, that's whose services you're gonna cut. Nobody likes to see that. So it's good for us to tell the truth. And if it's a little threatening, that's okay. We do it politely and we do it with a smile. We'll be okay. Anyone else? Because I like that question. And I would really do that. I would reach out to Ernie if we could put it together within a week. I mean, we could hold a virtual space like that. And we have done that. We've done that for Little City Foundation. We did that for Helping Hand. We've done that for Ray Graham. And in Ray Graham, they have a very large Spanish-speaking population. So we created it in Spanish so we could actually educate the families.
I feel pretty confident in speaking for parents that aren't here that
Great.
Last year I wouldn't have been able to attend because I was able to work. So I was still at work during this time and I wouldn't have been able to come.
Yeah.
And the only reason I'm able to come now is because my son is with my ex-husband. So I actually had a night where I saw the meeting and I'm like, you're gonna go do this. You can do it. It's the first time I've been able to do it. So having something virtual, last year I would have attended. I would have done it.
Thank you.
In a heartbeat. It's just, that's the majority of where I do all the meetings are virtual.
What time do you think works for you?
Well, for me, now I'm able to be more open.
Sure.
When I was a working parent, you know, I worked downtown, so I was until after 6.
So, like evening. We'd be happy to do that. So just think about it. If we could, we would serve that and be happy and honored to. Anyone? So you guys work here as well?
I do. I'm the CBS director.
Hi. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. President, any questions I can answer for you or any, you could think?
No, I think you covered a lot. The only thing that I would want to say is I hesitate to say that our families are apathetic. I think we have a mix of a lot of very elderly parents.
Okay.
Or parents, clients whose parents and family are not here any longer.
Yeah.
And the elderly have done their fighting because when their kids were little, there were no services.
That's right.
And then you have the other group
The
that's
younger.
and people are working and and I'm sure that's universal.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I don't like I hesitate to use the word apathetic, and I've used it in the past.
But I see.
I've just
You're saying there's a reason. It's not.
there are reasons.
Yes.
And there are some people that they're not, and I get that. But
Sure.
you're never going to do that. But having grown up central to these services and to places like this, I've seen the transition. And 30 years ago, there were a lot of people around, and saying that you have to scare people is absolutely right, because there was a time that there was something about Medicare, and they sent out a letter, and boy, we had this place packed because people were afraid that this was going to close and they were going to lose their services. So fear is a good motivator.
Everyone's, but just a drip of fear. I try to educate, but it is terrifying at the same.
Yeah.
Education
It
can be
is.
scary too.
It is.
Yeah. And I'm just so appreciative and to have your time and to have the opportunity to tell you what the ARC is and kind of what we're up to. We have to politely hold everybody accountable. We got to hold the governor's office accountable. He's been incredibly supportive, but he didn't like my question of, so we should be fine because you could just make it up here in Illinois. Apparently was not a great question or a great retort, but I meant it respectfully.
Could you go through a little bit what ARC is, how many employees you have?
Sure.
Where your offices are?
Yeah.
How you're funded, and some of that aspect.
I would love to. So we actually have a staff of 25, small but mighty. We're from Winnebago County down to East St. Louis. So we cover the entire state, almost east to west, but definitely north to south. And we have 8 directors that are comprised of 8 different grant programs. I could go through all of them. So we work on family transition. We work on family advocacy, which is PUNS. So from there, we help people in their direction. We are the Going Home Coalition, which is focused on state-operated developmental centers and people who want to safely transition to the community, and therefore also people that transition between state-operated developmental centers. We are Rev Up Illinois. We do voting rights. We are the Family to Family program. And this is great because 10 months ago, I wouldn't have been able to answer all this. So this feels good to me today, actually. And that's Susan Agrawal, Dr. PhD. Her story is unbelievable. So she has 3 children. Now 2 of them are concert pianist and violinist. One of them is playing in Japan tonight, really. And her daughter, though, her Miha, passed away when she was 10 years old. She was born with a slew of different disabilities, and home community-based services allowed her child to come home. And that's why she fights. So we have a team like that. We have Shirley Perez is down in South Holland. That's not too far from here, right? Okay, so she's in South Holland, but she takes on a whole community all by herself with the family advocacy. We're mostly grant funded. And one of my big pushes is to create more unrestricted funds, which allows us for more assisted technology and the hopes of being able to provide different advocacy than I would if the state wasn't paying my bills, right? So you have to be careful when you're funded by the state. You cannot always come out and say, I disagree with you, politely, because we would still like that grant to come back next year. So when you have unrestricted funds, you could put a little more emphasis and a little more federal. We have to be very careful. There was, with the family to family, DEI is no longer allowed. So small things, but we had to take pronouns out of our emails, because that was no longer accepted by the new administration. They won't accept emails with pronouns in them. So we have to be very careful about our type of advocacy. It's incredibly fascinating. So we're mostly state funded, and next year we're actually bringing in 3 internal hires, so 3 internal promotions to full-time. So as of FY26, we will have 28 full-time employees at the ARC of Illinois, which I'm incredibly proud. And we serve through hotlines, through email inquiries, through webinars, through trainings. On a weekly basis, our webinars produce advocacy and education to, on average, 1,500 to 2,000 people per week. So that's really where a lot of our bases come. You can come to us for any type of different advocacies. and different webinars and educational based such. We're actually adding next year special education for the first time. We've never created much of an of effort into special education. The reason being, for me, that was my first understanding of this entire world, was Ellis's special educators and the paras and the BCBAs and the people that came into our life and made me feel that someday things were going to be okay. Maybe different than I had planned, but they were going to be okay. So I think also when we start transition planning as early as maybe 6 or 7 years old and starting to inform families of things they can do at home, it creates a smoother transition even when they come to day services, or maybe when they move to residential, or maybe if institutionalization is the right way for their family, at least knowing what life looks like in a different lens than maybe we had planned.
Are you also seeing a reduction in the amount of grants you get?
We're not.
Good.
At all. As a matter of fact, we have extended our state grants last year. I'm very proud. We extended our state grants by $750,000. So the reason being, we took on more work. So that's why we were able to hire more people through family advocacy. I don't know if you know the Liggis consent decree, which is a large-scale lawsuit that was formed against the state of Illinois 20 years ago for lack of appropriate services to individuals with IDD. The LARC of Illinois is actually who filed that lawsuit. We've been in a lawsuit with them for, this is year 22. So because of that, they're trying to get people off the wait list. We have nearly 1,800 people on the wait list in the state of Illinois right now, and that's only because most people don't even know what the wait list or PUNS is. So I think if people truly knew, that wait list would be even longer, but part of that, in order for us to vacate that decree, there needs to be a wait list that's under 500. That's what's considered a best practice. So they're really trying to get people off of that wait list. So in order to do that, someone has to do the work to make that happen, which is why we received that funding. So for more work, promise not for more play, but for more work, yes. Can I dive into anything more on that?
It seems like what we're doing here then is just a small segment of the areas that you're involved with.
Yeah, we take on a lot. And you know, we work with providers. It's so interesting to me because there used to be a history at the ARC of like family versus provider way before my time. And I came from little cities, so I don't want to say like I'm pro-provider, whatever that is, but I just understand that the work that's done here at LARC, the work that's done, it changes lives. And people say, oh, you didn't care about families if you worked at provider. Listen, every day all we did is roll up and try with all of our might to protect every family that entered and every person. So we work very closely with IARF. So we work with the Institute, we work with IARF, we collaborate with UIC, we bring all of our voices together. I think we're always going to be stronger there.